if they were not happy with the outcome, make some similar allegation. All I can do is look at the facts of each case, but I can say that decisions and votes that are made while we're all sitting here and we're all speaking into the microphone, as far as I'm concerned, are above suspicion. And if someone were to come to me and say, hey, I don't think that was right in terms of it being a violation of the Open Meetings Act, I would say you're wrong.
Commissioner Briggs.
I have a question about when the Committee on Committees left the room to divide everybody up into committees. That was my biggest concern, was that happened in a different room. That one went right over my head. I didn't even realize. I saw the guys leave the room and had to ask Mark, what's going on? So I wasn't even aware that that's what they were doing. So it seems to me like that's a pretty...
There is, and let me just say, certain things, we can question every jot and tittle, and I understand your concern. I don't think there was any intention at all by any member of this committee. No, I know you're not. I know you're not. But I do know from my limited experience here that that's the way that the Committee on Committees has always deliberated. Mm-hmm. Now, whether it's right or wrong, there is a proposal that's on the agenda for an amendment to this body's rules mm-hmm. on reorganizing. Mm-hmm. And it addresses how the Committee on Committees meets and chooses the members of the standing committees. And it also addresses reorganization once the Committee on Committees makes the selection for the standing committees. And I think that would take care of any concerns in that regard.
Excellent. Well, like I said, I'm not questioning anybody's motives or intent. It just seems to me like that's a pretty cut and dried. They left the room, they deliberated, they came back and said, here's our decision. So to me, that's a bigger deal than what happened when we were huddled in two little groups. And I agree with Commissioner Briggs. I had a problem with that too, but at the time I was trying to just keep up with what was going on as a new commissioner. So,
okay, Mr. Law Director, you said something just a minute ago that you were concerned about citizens' perception. I'm concerned about we follow the law, and even though that I care about the citizens wanting us to have a good image and that we do things correctly. At the end of the day, if the citizens are mad, but we followed the law, then I think the law has to trump perception.
I agree 100%. The problem is, you say if we follow the law. There was an allegation made by a member of this body that the committee violated the law. Clear and simple. That's what he alleged. And so I gave advice, legal advice, on how to cure that alleged violation and put it behind us.
Okay, and we had the law director, your predecessor, here in the meeting. Nothing was said about the process that we followed. So I guess I'd like to ask you to hire someone, or if your office can do it without the conflict, to investigate the actions of the committee appointed the way it was, and also Commissioner Briggs' letter to the chairman, and also his conversation with at least two commissioners outside the public meeting about the problem of the appointments of the committees.
Well, if the commission as a body determines that an investigation should be performed, then I'll have to examine, number one, how to go about doing that, because I don't think it's proper for me to commence an investigation of my own client. And if this commission votes as a body to commence such an investigation, I'll report back and tell you how I think that should be done.
Commissioner Lambert.
Yeah. My real concern here is, it just looks like we've entered the era of the redo. The Sunshine Law is kind of vague, and if you interpret it in a really strong way, saying hello to a commissioner is almost a violation. I just don't want to see us get like D.C. is right now. Sometime around the first Bush presidency and the first Clinton presidency, after Ronald Reagan, Washington just kind of went downhill. We entered the 24/7, 365 everyday campaign cycle, and I don't think it's done this country very much good. And I think that the turmoil that we've had in Knox County over term limits and then the Sunshine Law violation, it looks an awful lot like we're headed in that direction too. And I'll confess, I've been a part of that. I'm not going to say I'm innocent in this. But what I'm afraid of is if we keep using the Sunshine Law as a weapon, where if we don't get our way, we demand a redo and holler the Sunshine Law, and out of an abundance of caution, we redo it. And this was a fairly simple issue, but I can see this being used, and I'm not accusing Mr. Briggs of using this as a weapon, but I can see this being used in a very close vote. I can see this being used as an offensive weapon to try to force a redo in the hopes that maybe one of those votes had changed. And I just think we need to be extremely cautious, because I don't think that what's going on in D.C. has helped this country, and I don't necessarily think that what's been going on in Knox County has helped Knox County. And I think that we need to settle down, and we need to quit these accusations and things. And again, nothing against Mr. Briggs personally. He's a friend of mine, saved my mother's life. But I just think that with the citizenry so hypersensitive of the Sunshine Law, we need to be sensitive ourselves and not be using this as a way to demand a redo every time we turn around.
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
We could debate this all day long. I think we've already remedied the situation with our vote. And as the law director pointed out, we have a resolution in here today to remedy some of the procedures that should keep this from happening in the past. So I make a motion we put it to bed and move on.
All right. You want to say something?
All I wanted to say was that as long as all of our votes are taken here at this table in the open, I don't think there's any way that somebody could use that as a weapon. And it seems to me like it's pretty simple that if you have a question for a commissioner dealing with county business, you put it on the forum.
Well, that seems very easy, but it could be an allegation that me and you talked outside the meeting before we came in here and got on the mic. I mean, that could always be an allegation, true or not.
Right.
And if you err on the side of caution, then you redo everything. So,
Well, I sent Commissioner Schaus an email asking if he would take my brownie troop on a hike. I mean, that's a personal communication, but it doesn't have anything to do with county business. So
It's my opinion that doesn't violate the Sunshine Law.
Thank
All
you.
right. But what I'm talking about is there comes a point when, and we're all political folk, we're interested in politics. There comes a point where you're talking about policy in the abstract. Gee, look at what Blount County's doing, or I read that such and such county was doing this, where a person's having casual, friendly conversation that is in no way an intentional violation of the Sunshine Law. And then later, if someone loses a vote, say on, and I'll just pull this out of my hat, transferable development rights. And they'll be like, ooh, I remember Commissioner Lambert and Commissioner Brown, when they met at some Republican club meeting, discussed the concept. Well, discussing the concept doesn't mean we're discussing the specific thing that we're voting on. Someone could come back and say, if that vote went the wrong way, and again, this is all hypothetical, someone could come back and say, oh, they discussed the concept. Maybe the Sunshine Law was violated. And if we err on the side of caution, then we would have a redo on a very important vote. And I just think, we had dinner and appreciated spending time with your family and getting to know your family. But we discussed politics. We discussed fuel